Welcome to How I Rent It, the podcast where we pull back the curtain on the tent rental industry. I'm Tony Ehrbar, the owner of American Tent, one of the leading event tent manufacturers in the U.S. As someone who got started in the event rental industry over 10 years ago, I'm excited to bring you the stories behind the people who keep events running smoothly. Was watching an episode of Shark Tank one night, had a couple of beers, and went on Craigslist, and in Green Bay was a tent rental business.
At the end of the day, failure was not an option. I'm going to do this.
Is this your first time on a podcast?
It is my first time on one, listening to one, seeing one. Yes, sir.
Each episode, we'll talk to inspiring event rental business owners to learn how they got started, the challenges they've faced, and their secrets to success. Whether you're dreaming of starting your own rental business or just love hearing great entrepreneurial stories with plenty of intent puns thrown in, this podcast is for you. Stephen has been through the rental industry for over 15 years.
And I was born under a tent.
This is the part where we're going to get into where we're going to have like VP of HR come in and just like okay the questions and answers. What does Ricky Bobby say? If you ain't first, you're last.
That's it. Absolutely.
So grab your coffee, your notebook, or just sit back and relax with a box of popcorn. Subscribe now on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, and join me as we uncover the journey behind the tent rental industry and how I rent it. Welcome back to How I Rent It, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the tent and event rental industry. I'm your host, Tony Ehrbar, owner and CEO of American Tent. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Nick Deninno, founder of Block and Roll. Nick got his start running PTG event services in New York, where he quickly learned how difficult it can be to anchor tents in place that you can't stake. Instead of working around the problem, he decided to find a better way. The idea turned into Block and Roll, a bow system that helps crews work safer and smarter when tents need to be anchored using concrete blocks. Nick understands the grind of event installs because he lived it, and now he's helping rental companies everywhere cut time, reduce risk, and take on jobs they couldn't before. We'll also share what's new with ATA Expo and why this year's event is one you don't want to miss. We'll get into how he got started, what drives his product innovation, and how the rental community can help grow stronger together. Let's dive in. Nick, how's it going, man?
Hey, Tony, good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited we could get you on.
Oh, I've been waiting for it. It's been great.
How are things out in New York?
Things are cold right now. Not going to lie.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of snow. I have a tent sitting out my window that looks like it needs some snow knocked off of it.
It gets in the way of my fishing, so it's a little tough.
Yeah, cool. Well, we're excited to have you on. This will be kind of a unique episode. We'll talk about how you got started in your rental business. We'll talk about how you sold that business after getting Block and Roll off the ground. Block and Roll is a great system, so we'll get into that. And then we'll talk about ATA Tent Rental Division, which you're the chairperson for. So, well, let's get started. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey through the rental business to where you are today with Block and Roll.
All right. Well, I'm just a kid from Brooklyn, grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And I guess in my early teens, I started a little DJ business, just doing parties. And that kind of was pretty good. Did that through high school, and I got a job working for a kind of a place that fixed DJ equipment and sold DJ equipment, and got a little heavier into that. Then I went to work for a radio station doing events and promotions in New York City, and that kind of propelled me into the events. I did 2 years working for Muscular Dystrophy doing events full time. And then I moved into my own business. And my first thing I did, because I had the DJ business, was I opened up a little indoor party center in Queens, New York. And we had a party room, and we were doing kids' parties back then. If you remember the old bull pit party places that were indoor, it was kind of the new trend back then. And
I was going to say pretty disgusting.
Yeah, well, it was
we out in there with Band-Aids and
I'm going to say we had a pretty clean place, but there was a lot of unique things we found in those ball pits. That's a story for another day. But it was interesting. We had our little party room. We did our DJ parties, and then we were pretty successful. And everybody asked me when we were booked, what do I do now? I'm like, I don't know. I said, I have an extra bounce house because we used to have inflatable bounce inside the place. And I said, I'll bring it to your house. And they're like, sure. Do you have any tables? Sure. I didn't have tables. I ran out and bought them at Costco. And we started doing home parties. So the original name of my company was Tumbles. That was the party center. And it became Tumbles Parties to Go was our original rental name. And we started renting and getting a little bigger and so forth, and for a couple of years. And then I think about the year was 2000. we bought our first tent and started getting into tents. We bought a couple of small tents from Anchor. I think they were Fiesta. They're a line of Fiesta tents. Back then, you know, you asked around, they were like the most reliable company you could find at the time. And you didn't have the access that you had now to find other rental companies. And we hooked up with them. We bought a couple of tents, and that went pretty well. And about a year later, I bought a small rental company in my area. Small mom and pop shop, but had a good amount of inventory, up to 60 wide whole tents. So we bought them out, but at that time it was getting too big for me because I had the other party place. So I brought my brother-in-law in, and we partnered and bought out this small little company and just kind of pushed it from there. So that was 2001. And then I would say by 2004, we probably owned hundreds and hundreds of tents at that point and started getting into larger scale events. But that was really my start, how I got into tents.
Okay. So what was the year that you started the business? I don't want to date you too much.
Well, 94, I opened the party place. And I think 98, I started dabbling in home rentals, bounce houses, cotton candy machines. I had some carnival games, typical amusement type companies. But the only difference between it's kind of unique because I had a little food operation at my party place. We started doing food catering as part of the thing, basically company picnics, and events like that. But shortly after, I would say in 2000, and I can't remember the year, maybe it was 2002, we booked a company picnic for 10,000 people. Food, rentals, amusements, entertainment, power, the works. I'd never done anything close to that. Our biggest party was 150 people at that point. But I had some good resources. I went to a couple of ARA shows at the time, met some people, made some connections, and we pulled it off and pulled off a 10,000 person event. That back at that time was my first six-figure job, and that was very early on. But a lot of work and a lot of collaboration with a lot of people. I think I
Yeah.
had my whole family working that day, including aunts and uncles.
We mentioned family a couple times. Talk me through working with family members, pros, cons, ways you've been able to keep things civil and separate family from work.
Yeah. Not the easiest thing in the world. When I first started, I had my sister working for me. I had my brother working for me. And, I think when you work with family, they feel like they could just challenge you, and that's pretty tough. So my wife has always worked with me, and that's the easier part of the deal. But when you work with your siblings, it gets a little tough. I worked with my brother-in-law. We were partners for over 20 years. We had a very good relationship. But it's not the easiest thing to do. I'm not going to lie. Working with family,
Yeah.
it's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the trick? You said easy to work with your wife. Do you have you walk in the door at 5 o'clock and you're not allowed to talk about work, or how do you keep marriage and work?
Yeah, I'll get yelled at every so often. Can we talk about this tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, because you get carried away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then you have some kids in the business too, right?
I do. My son works for me. My daughters have worked a little bit part time here and there. I have 4 kids, and but right now my son is full time and here in the office next door.
Yeah. Okay. So you started as more of an amusement business, right? Bouncers, amusement, and other stuff, and then got into tents. A lot of our listeners are in a similar position
Mhm.
where they have that bouncer business or whatever. They're already going to a site, right, and providing some service to a customer and thinking, well, why wouldn't I want to get into tents? So talk me through the transition there, and if you're giving some recommendations to people how to think about growing from an amusement business into expanding into tents.
Sure. So, it's the path for a lot of people. They start in their working out of their backyard or working out of a small storage unit or something like that. I had an entertainment business, a physical location, so it was a little bit easier. I had a little bit of space to put stuff, but we started very very small. I started with a couple of tables, a couple of chairs, and one bounce house. And funny, the bounce house came about because I had an inflatable inside the place, and it kept splitting open. And yet back then, you spent $10,000, $15,000 for an inflatable. Came from England. I think they all came from England at that point. They weighed 700 pounds. They were heavy vinyl. But we had an issue with one of them kept breaking open. So the person who sold it to me finally made a second one as a backup. So when one went down, we could send it out. So after a year or so, and they finally got all the issues worked out, we had this extra bounce and sitting there, and the new one wasn't breaking. They reinforced it, and we were okay. So we decided to rent that extra bounce house, and that's how kind of how it got started. My father-in-law was a businessman and a good mentor for me, and he looked at me and said, I was telling him that I'm thinking people asking me to do parties at their house. I'm going to do a couple things. He says, how's it working? I says, I think it could be good. I think we can do some business. He says, can you make $1,000 a week? I says, yeah, I think I could do $1,000 a week. He's like, that's awesome. That's a great add-on to what you're doing, go for it. And, well, that $1,000 a week really, really, really grew very quickly. And, not without a lot of work, but we started adding cotton candy machines, popcorn machines. We started adding the carnival games. I wasn't a huge amusement company, but we must have had, I can't remember now. I must have had 50 or 60 inflatables at one point, until the insurance got out of control for us and we started backing off. We had a lot of unique rentals. We liked a lot of unique custom rentals. So we had like different props and different things. We had portable fencing and, a lot of things that the average person didn't have.
Okay.
But, I reckon, it's like following your path and do what you do best and don't copy anybody else and don't follow somebody else's path. And I think that's what set us apart because we were not the cheapest. I could not be the cheapest rental guy around because I had an overhead, I had a place. And, so it's kill them with service and kill them with excellent product.
Right. Yeah. No, there's the triangle, right, of service, quality, and cost, price. And you can't do all three. I mean, Amazon maybe gets close, Walmart, but they're multi-billion dollar companies.
Right.
So yeah, I think a lot of people do the race to the bottom on price. Let's try to undercut, right? And it's hard to make money if you're taking you 20 times to pay back
Correct.
an item you bought as opposed to 10 times.
Yeah, exactly. Took me 10 years to raise the price of a rental table $1 because of competitors. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And it's like you want to raise it and you can't because everybody else doesn't want to budge. Yeah.
Right. So talk to a listener who's, like I said, in the bouncer industry. Maybe they have a $10,000. What would you go and do with that $10,000 to expand from putting a bouncer in someone's yard to getting into more tables, chairs, tents, and that kind of stuff?
I think the first thing I would do, and because I've learned, right? I've learned the hard way. I think the first thing I would do is, yeah, buy the tables and chairs, buy some of the rental equipment, and find a local company to sub out tents. Okay. Because it gets you started faster. It gets you to test the waters and see without investing a tremendous amount of money. And I think when you do start with tents, you talk to a guy like you, Tony, and you talk to a company like yours who knows the product is not going to start them off with something too big or too complicated, and they start off with a couple of frame tents, expandables, or you're always the best to go with because you can maximize your inventory. So I think it's important that they don't jump the gun too fast. Get a feel that they can do the business. Once they've booked 10 tent jobs in a year, maybe I say, okay, now you're ready. You're ready to invest in some tents. Go see Tony. You know what I mean? At that point, but I wouldn't want them jumping into tents right away because it is a whole different ballgame. There's a lot of safety things, a lot of issues. We'll talk about some of those things coming up later as we go along.
Yeah. And it sounds like you took the strategy of, I'm going to say I have it. And then if people start wanting it, then you're going to start buying it.
My wife always tells the story because she used to sit next to me in the office, and I'd get off the phone and she'd look at me. She goes, "We don't have that. We don't know. We don't own 50 tables or 100 tables or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. We'll get it. We'll take care of it." And we either bought it or we sub rent.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I'll be honest with you. Sub renting was great, but sub renting is ultimately what sealed the deal for me to go into tenting because
Mhm.
I started getting pushback from the companies I was sub renting tents from. And after you give them a couple of $4,000 or $5,000 tent jobs, you don't want to see your commission taken away because there was a yard wasn't clear or the patio furniture was in the way. And, after it happened one or two many times, or I returned the tables a day late because I had to pick them up on Monday and couldn't return them by the time they closed, and I got charged, I said, you know what, I'm just going to go buy my own tents.
Yeah.
But it took me some time. I established that I knew I could support the business before I did that.
What were some of the bigger challenges you faced once you went from sub renting to having your own tents?
Oh, transportation. right? Because now you're transporting tents. And when we bought the small rental company, they own a bunch of different tents, but they got me into high peak tents, high peak frame tents. They owned a bunch of high peak frame tents. Back then, I think it was Warner before they were separated. And which was good because they were the largest piece was 9'3" or something, so it could fit in the van. They owned another portable frame tent that collapsed down to like 6-foot poles, and so we got started relatively easy with a van and a small trailer, and we were able to get that work done. But trucking does, your transportation, how you're going to move this stuff now really does change everything. In the beginning, when you're doing residential jobs, it's a little easier because you're setting up, Wednesday, Thursday for a Friday, Saturday event. Sunday, you're breaking down on Monday or Tuesday. You don't have a lot of stress, not a lot of time constraints. So that's a little bit easier. But as you start getting into the corporate world and other events, marketing events, that all goes out the window for sure. And it went out the window fast for us. Yeah.
So you bought a business, right? That's kind of a unique thing. A lot of people start and just grow from there. So talk me through the purchase process, how you approached it,
Sure. Sure.
what the benefits, pros, cons
Sure.
were of it.
So I think it was 2001. So I had been doing tents for about a year. And we had been doing some rentals a few years before that. So we kind of had some decent business. And I think back then, maybe we were doing, I want to say $250,000 in business or $200,000 in business or something like that. And I definitely saw the increase, the need. I was going to an ARA show and I had lined up some financing. Lines of financing, was ready to put a second mortgage on my house, but I had lined it up and said, okay, we're going to go buy X dollars worth of equipment, some new tents, tables, chairs. We're going to kind of stop sub-renting for now and build. And I think I was prepared to spend about $200,000, right, in equipment.
Mhm.
I forget if it was my father-in-law, somebody called me and says, hey, I just saw this ad in the paper for somebody selling a tent business. You should look it up. So I went to ARA, did all my estimates, got all my estimates, came home, then called this company, went to meet with them, and looking at their inventory list, once we got that far, I'm like, they had everything we were going to buy at ARA, plus more, pretty good condition. And we had a little customer base. They weren't a big company. They were doing probably about the same, about $200,000 a year. So it was a no-brainer. I said, you know what? Let's buy them. I don't remember the purchase price we paid for them. I want to say maybe 160, 180,000. I don't remember the actual number.
Yep.
But I looked at it as an equipment deal. I said, even if we don't get any business, we've just bought more equipment than I was scheduled to buy at ARA, and we got a customer base. And boom, right away we started with their customer base, which was a big residential customer base focused on one geographic area, very easy to do. And that's really kind of jump started us. And then we were also doing catering. So we were offering our catering services to all these clients and just kind of got double the work out of it.
So it was being able to grow share of wallet with the customers they had. You were able to expand the number of jobs you could do. You said something interesting back there. You put a second mortgage on your house.
Yeah.
I know New Yorkers are known for being bold individuals,
Yeah.
but talk me through betting on yourself and how you thought through putting that second mortgage.
Well, I always had confidence, and a wife that supported me, and I worked hard. In the beginning, my wife was a single mother for a lot of years. I have 4 kids, so she, and they were. When I was just getting started, bought my first tent in 2000. I had my son was born 98. My daughter had a daughter born in 2000. So it was tough. She was home with young kids. Yeah, you have to have that confidence. You have to know, because it is a risk, and I always like to look at it and say, what I owe, do I have enough stuff here to sell it to cover what I owe if the blank hits the fan, you know what I mean? And that was my beginning ideology. Like, okay, we're okay because I have X amount of equipment I could sell, and this is what we owe, and we can get out. But that obviously did not happen. We kept pushing forward.
Right. By the way, you can swear on this podcast. We had Chad from Herculate, Tree from Autometrics, and Jason Damas from Miller on the last one. That was live at the ATA Expo, and I mean, probably 100 swear words in there.
Say no more to this kid from Brooklyn. No problem.
Feel free to swear on the podcast. Okay, so talk to me then about growing that business to the point at which you sold it.
So I think the growth for us, we focused on in the beginning. we saw right away that the residential events weren't profitable, and we started getting some corporate work. And funny story. So I bought that rental company and bought some Warner tents. Would not bought. It came with the job, right? So one day I get a phone call. This must be now 2003, 2004, somewhere around there. I get a phone call from technology, right? Who is now, they had split, but they knew us as customers because our old company had bought tents. And they said, we have a job for you if you want to do it, a referral. And I was like, awesome. And they're like, here's what you need. And I looked at the list and there was a hundred tents on it. I had six, right?
Yeah.
But I saw the job, I saw the potential. We wanted to break into the commercial market. So we invested and bought. Good play on them, right? We invested and bought those 100 tents from them.
Yep.
And they gave us the job. And we did that job. And that job was a catalyst for us to get many, many, many other jobs because the people we worked with were into large scale events in New York. And we were the only company that had high peaks. And that was the reason they came to us. They wanted technology to come do the job, but technology said, well, we have a customer in your area, you can use them. They'll have all of our product. And that's what we did. And that was one of the first large scale corporate events we did. Probably back in 2004 was probably close to or over I think it was over a six-figure job at that time, what we took
Yep.
on. So it was a very big catalyst for us to get into that. And then we were the only people in town with a high peak tent. I don't know why. It was just nobody else had them. Everybody had standard frame tents. We had all these high peaks. So we started renting them and being known for them. And I want to say back in 2004, don't laugh, I think we were getting $950 for a 20 by 20 high peak.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because we could.
Yep.
Right? Nobody else had it. I paid a lot of money for them, and we started the pricing, and it just kept for a number of years. We were getting almost $900. Maybe a residential job, we backed it down to $600, while everybody else in the neighborhood was getting $200 for a frame tent. So that helped, and that helped us to build more inventory and to get our name out there because we were the only guys in town with high peaks.
So for these big things, these big bold steps you took, it sounds like there was some financial calculations and those types of things behind the scenes. How did you go about doing that? Are you a finance guy, accounting guy, or did you have
No.
is your wife an accountant, a finance person?
I mean, she's
Talk me through the
Yeah,
audit.
I'm a big eyes guy, you know what I mean? And that's one of my faults, I'm not a real financial numbers guy, but I made a lot of common sense decisions, and that's basically how I could describe it. Not all of them were the greatest decisions, but for the most part, they were good decisions. So I'm a big I'm not an academic guy. I'm a common sense guy. So I see what we're doing. I could see the impact, what we can charge, how many how many jobs we think we can do with that product, and we go out and bought it. We typically bought product for jobs rather than buying them and trying to get jobs.
Okay.
So I would typically book the jobs in advance, usually, hopefully, and then buy what I need. And if I couldn't buy what I needed, I would sublet. But I tried to build the demand first and then buy the product. So we did our buying. We didn't usually do a lot of people did their buying at ARA, and I didn't really do a lot of buying. I got quotes at ARA. I waited till March or April when the job started coming in and I knew what I could do, and then I would pull the trigger and get what I needed to
Okay.
accommodate.
Did you have a kind of a payback calculation you did? Did you say I want 3-4 rentals to pay this item back?
I mean, on most rental items, we wanted 10. On tents, we wanted 2 or 3.
Yep.
I had when we started getting into the higher end clients and corporate jobs, I had a lot of clients buy me tents, if you know what I mean, because they wanted something a custom size, a custom color, a custom this. So we would, basically charge what it was costing us to get the tent in, and maybe it was a custom size, but we could always sell a custom size, a custom color, for the green or brown. I think we ordered some brown tops once. We never used them again, but the frame was good, and I just ordered some new tops. So that helped. That helped a lot to build because we had a lot of unique clients. We had those clients that want a tent that doesn't look like a tent.
Yeah.
Basically.
Got it. You talked about having those big eyes. Obviously, you're a big picture visionary thinker, right? But it sounds like you know to balance it out with common sense. Similarly, for me, that's kind of how I approach things. Is I have the big ideas. Do you surround yourself with people who challenge you and make sure you're making that right decision?
Well, I think the key to my success was having the right people, hiring the right people, and
Yep.
hire. I always like to say, hire people that are smarter than you, and I did that. And I had always good people who learned and really understood and kind of keep you grounded somewhat. You know what I mean? So I think that was a big thing. My top employee was Liz, and she was with me. Oof, I think she started in 2020 or something 2000. I'm sorry, very early on, and slowly I could see where she needed to be, and she needed to be at the top. You know what I mean? And slowly we transitioned where I was making decisions to her making decisions to her dealing with the clients, and that's what you have to do, and that's a tough process to let go. Liz was with me till the end, and she is, Liz Wilson. She is the, president of Mature right now, and,
Oh, okay.
currently working for Sunbelt, Temporary Structures, doing very, very large, construction temporary construction projects for temporary structures. Wealth of information. In the beginning, the transition was tough for her because she had the knowledge, she knew what to do, I had the faith in her, and we go to meetings together and the clients are looking at me. I'm like, "What are you looking at me for? She's got all the answers. Ask her." And that's tough. Back early in the early days, to have a woman intending to be kind of in charge, and she handled it well, and she wrangled them, and in the end, she had them in the palm of her hand, all the clients. And
Yep.
because when you know your stuff and you're smart, you're going to get respect. Doesn't matter who you
Right.
are, what you are. That's it.
Yeah, there's a good book I always recommend. It's somewhere behind me. It's called The Six Types of Working
Yeah.
Genius. It talks about different types of people, right? There's the big picture thinkers, there's the people who ask the hard questions, and then there's the people who get the work done.
Correct.
And you want to have all those types of people surrounding you
Yeah.
to fill in the gaps in the things that you're either good or maybe not so good at,
Right.
but also the things that bring you energy and the things that drain your battery, right? And so that's a great book. It's a great read that I always recommend out to people. So
I like the three P's from let me think of his name. Marcus Lemonis.
oh yeah,
People, process, product, right? You break that
okay,
down. If you break that down in your business, because when I heard that, I said, "Oh my God, he's exactly 100% right." You need the right people. If you don't have the right people,
right.
you're not doing anything. You need the
Yep.
processes to get to work,
Mhm.
and if you don't have good processes, nothing's going to happen. And for me, having those good people set up the processes, the proper
Yep.
processes, and then you have to have a good product. And
Mhm.
that's your basics, and I agree with that. Right out of his mouth, I think it's a great way to look at your business.
Yeah, we use EOS, which is the entrepreneurial operating system for our business, which mirrors that to a point, right? You talk about right person, right seat. You talk about getting your processes in place. You talk about getting a big picture that Nick would have down to the 90-day things you want your team working on.
Correct.
And ATA, which we're both on different boards of, is implementing that process as well.
Great.
So ties in pretty closely to that. So when you got to, you said 25 years, and that's when you sold the business.
Yeah.
How big were you at that point? How many people? You don't need to give me an exact dollar
Sure.
figure, but
Sure. We were
geez, maybe.
at the end. I mean, I had funny because I had more employees years earlier because then we started shifting to contract workers for a lot of our
Yep.
team jobs. So we'd bring in a lot of contract workers. So at one point, I think in my highest peak, we were about 100 people peak season. And I think we had about 30 full-time people. We operated out of a 50,000 square foot building and 30,000 square foot yard with all of aluminum was outside in our yard. I've had funny, our previous building, we had aluminum stored outside wasn't in such a great neighborhood, and we got burglarized twice where they stole. One time they clipped us for almost $200,000 worth of aluminum.
Jeez.
4 hours just peddling stuff. We had the cameras catch him, but we couldn't get enough to catch him. But
Yep.
in our new building that we were in, the last building, we had a security kind of complex and much safer, and we had gates and
Yep.
much better alarm system and notifications and all that. And luckily, we didn't have any issues while we were here.
Yeah. Got it. And your decision to sell was, we'll talk about block and roll, but it was directly related to block and roll, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think about 2000 in 2012 or so, we started with block and roll, the concept and so forth, and we started putting it together and realizing that this was a good, it really helped us, over the next years. It made a difference in efficiency and profit and safety and all that. And once that was going on for a number of years, I was getting to the point where you start thinking about exit strategy, right? You start thinking about it. You don't know if it's ever going to happen, but you want to think about it. I learned sitting in on some of these seminars, you want to at least have a plan. And I think in 2014, we did an exercise with a consultant just to kind of come in and evaluate our business. And I did that. And that helped us clean up our books and clean up our financial processes and different things that we do. And we went through that process. We even dabbled a little just to see if there was any, interest, try to get valuations. But that really didn't happen, and we kept going. And I guess back in 2000, maybe 17, 18, I decided that rock and roll was getting to where I wanted to be. I wanted a change in my life, and we started looking into selling the business. And at that point, we had pretty much everything set up correctly at that point to sell. And that's what we did. And we started looking, and it's kind of a slow process, and you go through it, and we went through a couple of possible deals, and then we made a deal. And we made a deal to close in January of 2020. Okay. So follow me along.
Interesting.
Follow me along.
Yes.
January 2020. Deal got held up a little bit, but was a ready to be signed deal. But they said, all right, we want to close March 31st. And I'm like, okay, no problems. That's fine with me. I get it. We're slow in January, February, March. You want to pick up and hit the ground running.
Yep.
And March 9th, we got the phone call. Not only did I get a phone call that I lost over, $1 million in business that one day from cancellations from COVID, the deal was off. They couldn't, too much uncertainty, and understandable, couldn't do it. But,
Yep.
at that point, I was positioned to sell. I was positioned to go. COVID wasn't that great for us. We did some long-term stuff, but in the end, when you have a very large operation, we focused our main business up to COVID. The last 7, 8 years before COVID, we were doing large festivals and events. So we would do, we did Governor's Ball in New York, which is a huge festival. I don't know, 100,000 people go to that thing or more. We did all these large festivals. These are 2-3 week build outs, multi 6-figure jobs. And we had quite a few of them. We did a bunch of large other events. And when that went away, you don't have much smaller stuff to fall back on, because COVID, there was nothing small, no large events were going on. So, we stayed the course, and we wound up selling at the end of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you use a business broker, or how did you?
Yes, 100%. I would not recommend anybody doing this with a local business broker. I would have them do it with somebody who understands the tent industry.
Yep.
They know their business, they know the clientele, they know who to go after, they know what to look for. Much, much different than somebody who just sells local businesses. That I would definitely recommend. They typically don't touch anybody. I find a lot of them don't touch anybody under $3 million, but you might find some of them that do 1 million to 3 million kind of companies. But most of them start at 3 million and up for the bigger consultants that you want to sell with.
Is there anyone you'd want to give a shout out to who you think does a good job? Maybe the one you worked with, or you've been in the industry a long time.
I worked with a couple of great guys. They have since split up, and I think they're on their own. And the company was called Vendo, and John and Kevin. Kevin is still around doing it, and they were very good at what they do. They were former, correct me if I'm wrong, and I might get it wrong. They were former rental guys. I can't remember if it was either Arena or Classic. I can't remember. They were in the business, in the industry, knew everything very well, and they did a great job. I know Gary Stansberry is another great operator out there who's taken a lot of companies and sold them, and he knows his stuff too. And I would definitely go seek a consultation with one of those companies.
Yeah, they help with the deal structure, right? It's like an investment banker you would have if you're trying to sell a big business to private equity or whatever it looks like. But
Right.
I think one benefit they add, or among multi benefits, is making sure you don't undervalue yourself. I think a lot of people don't appreciate how much they could sell the business for, and you feel uncomfortable saying my business is worth 5 times my profit or 6 times my profit. And so those guys, they'll cost money, but they'll also get you a higher multiple on your profit, right?
And just nobody's getting 10 times their money. Not happening.
Yeah.
It's a fairy tale.
Right.
Yeah.
What is typical multiples?
I think in this industry, I mean, again, depending, there's a lot of ranges of companies, but I would think you're probably in the
Okay.
3 to 5 range. I think that's a more realistic number to look at.
Yeah, and that 5 number tends you mentioned you started thinking about it 6 years before you wanted to do it, and I've been to some of those seminars you've also been to. It's never too early. I mean, year 1, you're not gonna think about it, but it's never too early to think about it, so you can get yourself cleaned up, so you can think about the important factors that matter to a buyer, so you can get that 5 multiple versus that 3 multiple, right?
Correct. Exactly. And it's a good exercise to do, to spend a few $1,000s to have somebody come in and overlook somebody who's not your friend and come in and tell you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, because you could think you're doing something right. And the industry is driven a lot on emotion, right? Let's be real. It's emotion and ego, right? There's a lot of both, right? So that doesn't always turn into profits. Bigger is not always more profitable. It's usually not more profitable. So, but you need somebody to come in and say, hey, you should maybe not rent this stuff because you're not making money with it. I know you like it and you want to compete with the Joneses, but not for you, and that kind of stuff. And there's some hard answers you might get. It's hard things you might get, but I think in the end, that'll make you a stronger company.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't do a call it a product level profitability analysis to think about what things are making them money versus the things that aren't. And a lot of folks do way too many things, right? You have a popcorn maker that one event wants to use every single year, and it just sits there for the rest of the year.
Right. Yeah. You want to make sure you're really making money on these products, and not just because your competitor has it, because you could go broke fast and have a lot of stuff sitting around. It's just not going to go out. And listen, I'm guilty. I had a lot of unique items that we had for years and years and years, way too long, that we should have sold and got rid of. But you keep it because maybe it's sentimental value or whatever it is, but you don't want to get rid of it. But in the end, it's not making money. Cut it loose.
Yeah. Yeah. We sold our business 4 months before you did.
Okay.
Well, 4 months before you were supposed to.
Mhm.
So I didn't get tied into the COVID
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but same thing where American Tent was getting big, right? And I wanted to focus on that.
Right.
I like the whole ass one thing, don't half ass two things.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so we'll do some rapid fire rental questions, and then we'll jump into talking about Black and Roll a little bit. So what was one tool or piece of tent equipment you couldn't live without, and you can't say Black and Roll?
Oh man, one tool or tactic pick. I mean, yeah, that's tough. I would say it was a lot of things, but I think like the most important thing was a good set of tools, a good set of hand tools. You need certain things to get the job done, because we're working with equipment that's 5, 10, 15 years old. It gets tossed around, things get bent, holes get dinged. So you need to have certain things that just you always have with you, and that's a good set of tools.
So that was in the glove box of every one of your trucks?
We had at one point, tools is a sore subject for me because I've tried and failed so many times to have a good tool program. But at one point, we gave out little tool pouches that go on your belt that had 3 most popular tools. A wrench, adjustable wrench, a screwdriver, and a angle cutter. Why do we have an angle clipper? So we're not using knives, taking zip ties off tents and cutting sidewalls. And to me, those were like the 3 important things to always have with you.
Yeah, and it's smart to put it on their belts, right? You eliminate waste of them going back to the truck, trying to find it in the truck. We do that a lot out on our manufacturing. I'm sure you guys do that as well at Black and Roll.
Simple things, right? You just if you have it with you all the time, you're ready to go. You're not walking across the job site looking for something.
Yep. What was the most memorable event you did? And being in New York, I'm hoping this is a badass event.
Well, I think the most memorable event for me was a disaster. Okay. It was a golf tournament we did for the PGA for their seniors tour in Eisenhower Park, which is in my neighborhood. And it was a very large scale, tough job on a golf course. We didn't do the staging elevated, but every tent was elevated up on platforms. And we had a tornado come in the night before the golf tournament was going to open and tore down bunch of tents, the main tent, trees, displays. And what made it memorable for me was not the disaster part, but it was a disaster. Nobody got hurt, thank God. Was the way I was able to rally no, I shouldn't say I rallied them. How my team rallied around this problem, and my competitors who I needed emergency equipment from, and rallied together and got us what we needed. And we worked through the night and we got the event off Now, didn't look the same, wasn't as decorated, didn't have the TVs because they all got smashed and different things like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's burned in my head, the high and the lows, the low of the destruction and the high of getting it all. Well, it was a high, a low, and a high because we were done and we were standing back looking at this site and saying, wow, we did this, like this is not a big deal. This was back in 2007, I think, right? So this was, big job and big accomplishment. And looking at this, and great. And then all of a sudden, in a minute and a half, it was destroyed. Not all of it, because it, like tornadoes do, they kind of zigzag and hit a couple of things and knock them down and hit the main tent on the 18th fairway, the big VIP tent, if you will. And then the high again of putting it all back together. So I think that was one of the most memorable things for me.
Yeah. Yeah. The tent rental community is great. I think it's unlike many others where I'm sure your competitors, it was we want to make sure this event goes off well in our community.
Right.
And so we're going to help you out.
And I'm gonna, because you're on that topic, I'm gonna say this because this happened to me very early on, about 2002, maybe. Large 60 wide tent up at a vineyard. Now, I had just gone to a bunch of shows and met some people, right? And you do what you do with you go to these shows, you network, and that is the main reason you go to these shows. You network, and besides the education, you network and meet people because that's going to save your butt later. And the tent went down in the middle of the night, bad windstorm, and I didn't have another 60 wide pole tent. Didn't have it. I didn't even know anybody who had one local or that would deal with me locally. And I called somebody I met at the show, and he said, okay, he was a tent rep, and he said, okay, I'm going to call you right back. And he didn't call me back, but a gentleman called me. His name is Ken Puff. And he said, I hear you got a problem with a tent. We'll be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, what? He says, yeah, he filled me all in what you need. We'll be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And these guys who I didn't know from Adam, but because of a good referral, showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning with a new tent for me and helped me get it reset. And there, I'll give them a shout out, Kenny Puff from Party Line Rentals up in Westchester. So they travel from Westchester. But that's why it's so important to meet people and make connections, make friends in this industry because you're going to need them.
Yeah. And we'll talk about ATA later, but those industry associations are a great way to get to know people, those types of shows and those types of conferences. So let's jump into block and roll.
Yeah.
So talk me through where that idea came from, and then when did you get started with block and roll stuff?
So I would say the idea came again out of disaster, right? Okay. So we had a couple of problems with water barrels. So we immediately moved to concrete. And it was a hard lesson. We built some concrete blocks and they worked. And we built some barrels. We took the water barrels and filled them with concrete. And I want to say there are about 800 pounds of concrete in this water barrels. And we did that for a number of years, but not without issue. Falling over, almost hurting people, sometimes hurting people, not seriously, but getting, injuring some guy's leg because it fell over, hurting somebody's back because they tried to get it back up. And then we had two mishaps with trucking where barrels fell off the truck because the way we used to palletize them and strap them was just inherently going to be a problem, and it finally did, and we lost a barrel twice on a highway. One was almost an accident where the car stopped short, the truck had to swerve. Another one was just coming around a curve, and I said, "This has got to stop. Something better has to happen," and that's where Block and Roll was born. And I started with a napkin sketch, and the funny thing is, right? You think about being discouraged, right? So the first guy, I have a sketch of what kind of is the predecessor to what Block and Roll became. Right? It was similar but a little different. And I went to a company and it found a guy who says he'll make me a form and he'll build me a sample. Took $2,000 from me. I don't remember, whatever it was. And then ghosted me. And then I could never find him and just took my money, gone. And I'm like, okay, well, that didn't go well. And, some people would walk away and say, well, this is just not meant to be. But I said, you know what? No, let's just do it. And we got some wood. We built our own form in house. We got some concrete in and we did a sample that didn't work, so it was the first rendition. Then we revised it and said, okay, we need this, we need this, we need this. Done. We took a hand truck and I had a guy who did maintenance in my shop and was a welder. And I said, okay, put this here, take this off. And we kind of mocked up this Frankenstein looking cart. Took us about 3 or 4 times to make adjustments. And finally we got like, wow, that was easy to move that. And, and it was this Frankenstein looking thing, and the block was kind of crappy looking, but the concept was there. So then we went and built a bunch more. And I think I built about 25 or 30 blocks to do a test. And we took it to an annual job we used to do. And this annual job was very tough. It was the streets of Manhattan. It was a overnight setup and a 4 hour, was supposed to be a 4 hour breakdown, but it took us till 4 o'clock in the morning. The event ended at 6 o'clock at night. So we took one section of tents. We had about 100 10 by 10s down the street. And I did block and roll these new blocks on about 10 tents. And right next to me was another group of tents with the old way we used to do it. And I'm not an in shape guy, never have been. But I said to my crew, I said, okay, I'm going to do this tent and take it apart, and you're going to do those tents. And I broke down in a quarter of the time that it took them to break down and stack their blocks and get them ready for pickup and all that. So right then and there, I knew we had something that was going to work. The following year, we did the entire show with block and roll. And instead of 4 o'clock in the morning, we got out of there at 10 o'clock at night. So that was where I knew this was going to be an efficient product. That was going to be, the way to go. And that's when I went to file the patent.
And what are the big differences between block and roll then and that traditional 1 ton cement blocks, which
Yeah.
I despise those 1 ton.
Yeah, I mean, the 1 ton blocks are you need machinery to move them, right? Let's be honest. You need machinery to move it. The block and roll was designed for no machinery. They'll work with machinery. They work great with a forklift or a tent ox, but they were designed to just be able to do it with a hand cart, but just by manpower, and very efficiently and very easily. And that's really the main thing. So you can move 350, 500, 700 pound block one person. Now, if you're 140 pounds, I don't know if you're moving a 700-pound block, because our carts are designed on leverage. So you need some body weight to get some leverage. But 500-pound blocks, almost anybody can do, very easy to move. And you can gang them up to get to that 1 ton weight. You can put a bunch of blocks together. We have some custom straps that allow you to tie four blocks together as one strap. But I think the main goal was that, hey, now you can do this without bringing a machine into the job. You can get it into the backyard where you have a patio and you can't put stakes. You can get it into an area where there's underground utilities and you can't stake. It kind of changed the game. Now, we were already 80% of our work was ballasting. And it's funny because when you're in that mindset, you have to be efficient, because you just was spending so much extra time, extra effort. The guys were getting tired, they were getting hurt. So that was really the main goal. And when you're doing a lot of ballasting, it's really important. But then even on smaller jobs, it is so efficient and so much easier and so much safer. And I think it's allowed a lot of companies to take on those jobs that they maybe normally wouldn't. Back when I had our first I might go back to one of our first water barrel jobs. The was a small tent in the backyard of a 20 by 30 tent, or 16 by 30, I can't remember. And we had a bunch of water barrels, and the crew calls me screaming, and I can't really I hear wind, and I don't know what's going on. And all I get out of the phone call was tent and roof. And I'm like, the tent is on the roof? Sure enough, this tent flipped up from the back of the house onto the roof of the house, with the water barrels just kind of hanging, and it got stuck in a tree, so it didn't go all the way over the house. And it was a perfectly calm day. The guy said, out of nowhere, this wind burst came out and just flipped this tent over. And that was like, again, the end. And I wish I knew you back then, or who knew what your Githy barrels, because that would have been probably the direction I would have went in, because I needed something that held more and was heavier and attached to the leg and all those things. So we immediately went to making concrete. We made like ice cube trays, and we out of wood, and we were making these concrete blocks. And they were just regular concrete blocks with rebar on top. They just took forever. The difference between those blocks and block and roll is, on the concrete block, you have to tip the block to get the hand truck under it. And that takes effort, and that hurts your back. And then when you go to tip the block on the hand cart, you either have to tie it or have somebody push so it doesn't flip off.
Yep.
So that's why I knew block and roll had to have a way of doing that without those steps. That's why we have that fork pocket going through it. You have a positive engagement. When you flip the cart on one of our carts, it can't fall off. And we gave you the leverage on the height of the cart and where you stand on the cart to tip the block over without using your back. And that's really the main issue, the main differences.
Yeah. So you talked about water barrels. That is a four-letter word in the industry. There are still people who use them. So as a resident ballasting expert, and we'll talk about the ballasting tool a little bit later, what are the 2, 3, 4 downsides of using those water ballasts, the traditional just 55-gallon drums that you attach from the top?
I think that the downfall of the water barrel, the main issues are: one, they slide super easy. Two, you're using water, which moves. We're rarely ever, and I have the receipts to prove it. We're rarely ever filling them up all the way. Okay, they're getting
Mm.
3/4 filled, and I know why, because they're filling them where the water source is. Then they got to put them on a hand truck and move them over to where the tent's going to be, and they don't want to get wet when they're tipping them over. So they keep them about 3/4 filled. If a barrel has a leak, you're going to lose water. And when we did our first wind tests with water barrels versus block and roll, we do have a cool video up on YouTube. It's kind of cool to see it. It's simulated, so it's not real wind, but we took a giant movie prop wind turbine. Basically it's like a 6-foot fan blade, and we blew wind directly at a tent with water barrels. And what immediately happened was the water barrels slid, moved. The wind pressure put pressure on the sidewall, which kicked the legs in. As soon as the legs kicked in, the tent started to get compromised, and in true form, we broke a tent leg because it was bouncing, and then the water barrel started to tip, and when the water barrel started to tip, the water fell out. So those are kind of the main issues with the water barrels. They're not filled all the time, and another pet peeve I have with water barrels or ballasting in general, 'cause it's not just always water barrels. We ballast a tent. We got a 20 by 20. We put 4 units of weight. I don't care what it is, right? It's concrete, it's a water barrel, it's a 500-pound block, it's a water barrel, it's a UV barrel, whatever it is. We have a 20 by 20 tent, 4 barrels. We have 1 unit of weight per leg. We now go to a 40 by 40. We're still only using that same 1 unit of weight. The tent is 4 times larger. The weight
Yeah.
needs to be increased. We go to a 50 by 100. We're still using that same 1 unit of weight. And that is something in the ballasting world that needs to change. Whether you're using block and roll, whether you're using water barrel, whatever you're using, you have to increase your weight based on the size of square footage. Okay. And then we'll talk about the ballasting tools and how you can get help doing that if it's not something you can figure out. But I think if you look back, and the other pet peeve I have is with ballasting is skipping legs. Very often,
Yeah.
the legs skipped. And Facebook is a great place, and people love to showcase their work. But I can't tell you how many people showcase work that shouldn't be showcasing work. You should not be showcasing work where you have a tent that's, 80 feet long and you have 4 weights on the 4 corners, 1 weight on each corner, nothing in between. You shouldn't be showcasing water barrels that are half full, if you're going to use water barrels, which I don't recommend. But now, can water be a great ballast? Absolutely. Your product. Fantastic. I talk about it all the time when I do seminars, because it is a great product, because it has the features that you need to be safe. It ties the leg to the ballast. It has a much more water. Are they 800 pounds? Forgive me for not knowing the exact number. What are your weight? Your
600.
600, yeah, 600 pounds. So your water barrel is typically 400 and what is it, 480 pounds if it's full. So most people are only weighting it down halfway to 3/4. So you're putting so much more weight on it. It's so much more of a professional installation using your barrels, Giffy barrels we call them, right? I give get the name wrong.
We changed it to tent ballasting system.
Okay,
Because
system.
the water barrel, like the
Gotcha.
4-letter word. So
Gotcha.
we wanted to make sure it wasn't associated the net effective weight, even though they're 400 pounds or whatever they are, the net effective weight we'll get into from the ballasting tool of those is 50, 60 pounds. Like you said, a leg can kick in and then you just have something attached from the top. I'll use my Starbucks cup. Attached from the top, it'll tip over and it becomes wheels for the tent. So the best way to ballast something is to make sure it attaches into the bottom of the leg.
Right.
Make sure then that runs up to the fitting on the tent, and you've formed the strongest shape you can, which is a triangle.
Correct.
Which is the big benefit
100%.
there.
And ATA, back when they were IFAI, 2013, maybe, I can't remember the year. The first year I did block and roll, I exhibited there with block and roll. They had and I didn't know what was going on, but I walked in and they have a tent. They start setting up a tent kind of in the middle area where we were set up. And they're bringing in water barrels. I'm like, what are they doing? And they brought in, I think, 8 water barrels per leg, because they did a test. And to get the proper weight for that 20 by 20 tent, they needed 8 water barrels per leg. And it was just completely ridiculous to see this tent. You couldn't almost walk in because there was so many weights on it. But they were making a dramatic point that this is why they did actual tests with Clemson University. So it wasn't like they just made this stuff up. And they proved that the slide factor and the tip factor of the water barrel that you just mentioned only gives it a relative holding power of about 200 pounds, even if you have it full. So
Mhm.
that's the difference, and that's was important message that got out. And then the municipalities around the country, a lot of them are banning it and not allowing the traditional water barrel. So you have to really know before you go to put it up and use to make sure that your jurisdiction allows it or not, because it's important.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's an important factor, and like I said, they sometimes those municipalities then hear our system says water, right? At water barrel, and
Right.
so that's where we need to differentiate and help customers out with that, but
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen the same thing with 8 of those sitting around the legs, right? And so I think safety being paramount, if you do something wrong, you have a weather event, there's no quicker way to end your business than to harm someone, harm property.
Correct.
And so ballasting safely is very important. And you and I are probably some of the bigger proponents of that. I got Peter McVeigh on staff
Yeah.
here who
100%.
safety is really important, but not only does it harm your own business, but it harms the industry, right? It
Yeah.
makes us look bad. People see something in the news.
Yeah.
So you want to be safe when you're working on those
I
things.
only disagree with Pete one time. One time. So he's famous for saying, "I'll take a steak any day. Staking is the best over any kind of ballast, any kind of thing." And I'll say this because from experience, I've had steaks fail, and steaks can fail, and he agrees. But but it's one of his things. He always said that always steak, always steak. And I say, I slept better on nights that I knew the tents were up with ballast. And why?
Okay.
Because if it rained all night long, I knew the ground was going to get soft, but I know my ballast was going to stay heavy and not
Yep.
change. I knew if a wind gust came in and jolted the tent, where it jolted it so hard that sometimes it jolts a stake. And once the stake gets jolted a little bit, it's failed and it could come out. I knew if my block got moved an inch, it landed and it's still 1,000 pounds or whatever ballast we left on that. So I personally always slept better with ballasted jobs because I knew it couldn't change. I knew there was a variable. It eliminated that variable, right? Is the ground hard enough? Did the water saturate? I had a large event once where we had a tent, we had a large structure up, and it rained so hard, and a fire marshal came in, just coincidence, and said, well, there was puddling water everywhere. He says, how do we know those stakes are still holding? I says, well, we'll go and test them. And we tested a few, and there was a few that did not hold. And we had to
Yep.
bring in ballast and add extra weighting to those points. So it does happen. Now people live. I think one of the worst things that people in this industry do. Oh no, it never happened. Never. We never get wind, right? No, that's not going to happen to me. I don't
Yeah.
have any issues like that.
Yeah.
I don't wish it on anybody. Okay, but
Yeah.
issues can happen to anybody, and be ready for it.
Yeah. That's a terrible analysis to say because it hasn't happened, it will never happen.
Right.
Right. I mean, weather is only getting worse.
Right.
Right. You see that more hurricanes down in Florida. So it's going to happen. And you want to be smart about what you have sitting out there in the field.
100%. And I don't care what tent manufacturer you buy from, how much you spent on the structure. You think you have the best structure in the world. Any tent can fail. And it's not a manufacturer's problem. It's just because Mother Nature could come in and put weather upon you that the tent can't handle. And the best thing you can do is plan for a good failure. Okay. What is a good
Mhm.
failure? If a tent is good, it can't take the wind load. You got a 90, 100-mile-an-hour gust come in, or a 60-mile-an-hour straight line. It just hit the top of your frame tent the wrong way. And maybe your tent is engineered for 90 miles an hour. Fine. Right. And it could still fail. Have it fail and stay in place. And the only way you're going to do that is by having enough ballast on your tent, whatever ballast you're using. Make sure you have enough of it that if
Yep.
that tent fails, it failed in place and doesn't blow down the field or down, on the roof of a house.
Yep.
In my experience. So, and a few other tent failures I've had in my career, which we didn't have a lot, but they were all controlled failures where
Mhm.
the tent, the rafter couldn't take it, the rafter bent, water pooled, on the top of the tent and compromised the tent, and the tent, part of the tent collapsed, and it did not blow away. And I think that's what your goal is to have a good failure, because they're going to happen to everybody. And if you think it's not going to happen, it's not that it's going to happen. It's just, when is it going to happen? And good safety procedures will keep you safe, keep your guests safe. And that's really important.
Yep. Yeah, and you wanna think about when to get out of the tent, right? We had a disaster in the industry on 5 years ago where whoever was in charge of the event said, "Everyone stay under here in the tent,"
Yeah.
right? As opposed to saying, "Hey, there's the gym however many feet away."
Yeah.
So a tent is a kite, right? That's attached down to the ground, and you get wind coming underneath it. So even if you do have it ballasted properly, you still want to have a number at which you tell customers to get out of the tent, whatever that miles per hour is. Pete does sell a pretty cool wind alarm system that helps you test that out, and it'll send you text messages about everything. But the guy who actually invented the Giphy system, so that was I think his grandson's name was Giphy. And everyone always has a hard time, is it Jiffy or Diffie? So that's why
Yeah.
tent ballasting system. But he did a similar thing to what you did, where you put it in a wind tunnel, right? And the top of the tent blew off before the tent moved.
Correct.
And that was what makes all the difference, as opposed to having that tent move, all the metal moving. You'd rather have a controlled blow off of the top
Correct.
than you would of the whole structure with all the metal and everything.
And that's just going to keep people safe. And but the number one thing is what you said: make sure you're not in the tent. And you're somewhere in 35 miles an hour, 35 to 38 miles an hour is where you want to be out. And everybody says, "Well, my tent is rated for 100," and I'm like, yes, it could be rated for 100, but that debris over there, that garbage can that's down the road, that thing could blow in the air, hit your tent, and compromise your tent. It could also compromise people trying to get out of the tent once you get past 35 miles an hour. The wind starts getting nasty. You don't want to be in wind at 50 miles an hour. You have debris blowing around. There's a chance of a higher gust. So the industry and myself, the way I did my company was 35 miles an hour was our cutoff. When winds got that. And we, on our larger jobs, I would have loved to have Pete's system. We never got into it, but we had all of our leads and project managers had wind meters, had pocket wind meters. So they're on a job, they can monitor, hold the wind meter up, get a good reading. All right, that's a 20-mile-an-hour gust. They'd monitor it again, because there's nothing like real-time wind reports than what you're getting on Google or something like that. And we'd know right away, and we'd make the call to evacuate.
Yeah, Pete uses his beard. He calls it the Beardford scale instead of the Buford scale.
Yep.
So
It's pretty accurate. I've seen it.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And back to your point about disagreeing with Pete.
Yeah.
Disagreeing with Pete only once is pretty impressive. I disagree with him on a daily basis. It's always a fun time.
No, I love Pete. Pete has been such an asset to this industry for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So one more thing about Block and Roll, and then we'll jump into ATA. So talk to me about the growth of Block and Roll, some of the additional products you guys are proud of that's
Sure.
kind of line extensions, right, from just the standard block.
And the growth of Block and Roll has been very humbling to me, because I really, it's nice to be taken in by the industry and a lot of companies, and the kind words that they give me when I meet them at shows, and how it's helped their business. And that to me is the goal, right? And if I'm helping people, and we've had a good product, but we're also helping people, that's really important. So being in the tent industry for so many years, and being a gadget guy, because I'm definitely a gadget guy. And this guy, believe it or not, I am not an engineer. I have trouble doing basic math. Okay. So not going to lie. So, but I have good common sense, right? And that's how I built all this stuff. When I built, funny story, I built the first Block and Roll cart, the real one that we were going to consider the real cart. I built it out of steel, and it was 180 pounds. It was a tank.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to use it because it was too heavy. They couldn't get it up and down off the truck. They would drop it off the flatbeds because it was the lift gate, and they would break something on it because you're dropping it off they'd bend an axle or something. So I went to an engineer and said, I need to make this lighter. What can you do? He looked at it. He looked at me. He said, make it out of aluminum. I says, get out of here. You don't know what you're talking about. That's what I said to the guy. He says, no, make it out of aluminum. I says, you don't know the tent industry. You don't know the tent crews. They're hard on everything. He says, build it out of aluminum. I'll come back next week. So I build this thing out of aluminum. He tells me what to take off. He says, take this off, take this off. Okay. I build it out of aluminum, and we test it, and it worked, right? And he came back to look at it. He says, "But what's this extra stuff? I told you to take it off." I said, "Listen, I'll compromise with you. I'll build it out of aluminum, but I'm leaving some extra bracing in because I know the tent industry."
Right.
And excuse me. So we left some extra bracing in it, but he was the one that got us to. We did the testing on it. We did the weight testing. He signed off on it, gave us an engineer stamp on it that it can handle the weight that we're saying it can handle. And we didn't look back from there. It's been a great product. We also have Granite makes a product for us. They make a cart, our loop handle cart. That's a combination of aluminum and steel, so it keeps the weight down. But they use products that they use on all their other carts, so we compromised and they came up with a real nice design. And that's one of the other designs that we sell. But again, being a gadget guy and being in on these jobs, I would just go to the jobs and I would watch and I would see what these guys are taking the time, what the crews are taking the most time on. Hanging lights. We used to do a pole tents, and we had to put these lights, and it was a festival, kind of a craft fair, I should say, craft fair. And whatever we did was too dark because the lights were only hanging from the center pole, and there was never enough lighting. And I said, we need to hang the lights like from the lace lines. And we're like, well, how are we going to do that? I don't know. And I went back and I got in the shop and still stood over one of the guys that says, do this, weld this, tack this here, boom, 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 make me 4 of those. Make me 4 of them. We went to the next time we did that job. I says, hang the lights in here like this, and we put them in the lace line, and now we had the lights where we wanted them down the lace line. And that's how one of our tent brackets was born. So everything was born out of necessity. We looked at what is the need for something. A stupid little thing. We used to do these large festivals. We'd have 100 to 120 fire extinguishers on the job, predominantly high peak tents. High peak tents have a 2.5-inch diameter. There isn't a clamp made for that'll fit 2.5-inch diameter that's under $50 or $75. Can't afford that for a fire extinguisher. So I went and made custom fire extinguisher brackets that would fit a 2.5-inch thing, and they'll fit a 2-inch, so it works both ways.
Yep.
We did the job the next year. What used to take them 6 hours to go and hit all these sites took them less than an hour. And again, that's where I kind of said, okay, this is my wheelhouse. I just want to make this stuff that I knew worked and saved people time. And, we between our lighting, because we used to use 40-pound metal halide lights. I was one of the first companies to introduce LED lighting to tent guys, to make it accessible and tested and UL listed. And, we did all the due diligence to make sure it wasn't just an Amazon light that you buy that's going to break in 6 months. And so we had certain specs that we made sure they required. Our Keter clamps for tents, for structure tents. I own 3 different size structures. At one point, I had 3 different brands of clamps. I said, "This is crazy." They always bring the wrong clamp to the job, right? That's inevitably going to happen, and you have to buy 3 of everything. So I went and designed a clamp that would be universal and work with almost every size structure from 38 millimeters to 120 millimeters. And those are the things. Again, that's what really separates Block and Roll and B&R's products, because we built it from necessity, not just from an office or a designer's point of view saying, oh, this will work. Because I've bought many tent products and I shook my head and said, whoever's selling this product never spent a day putting up tents, because it's just not designed for our industry. And
Right.
we design everything for our industry.
Well, and this goes back to eliminating waste, right?
Right.
You can do things faster if you have something that works for each of your different styles of tents. You're inevitably going to get to a job and you're going to have the wrong clamp, and you're going to have to send someone back. So if the clamp's universal, you can't fuck that up and grab the wrong clamp. You just grab a clamp and it works on all the different types of tents. And that's super important in this industry to make sure you're making money on your jobs.
And I think after my 75th exit light that we tossed in the garbage because it just got mangled on a job, and the side lights would fall off, and we were required to use them almost every job. I came out with what is now our Porta exit, which is a compact light that has no side lights, the emergency lights on the bottom, and we came up with a case, right? And it's like, that's it. Now, you got to remember to put it back in the case. But if you do that, you will never break your light.
Yeah.
And we proved it because we did it. Everything I sell, we use in our tent business. and
Yep.
test it.
So let's jump into the ATA tent rental division. So, as I talked about earlier, I'm on the big board for the association. ATA's Advanced Textile Association. It's a wide range from fabric structures to tents to awnings. You have narrow width fabric, so it's basically everything tied into the textile industry. So, tell me a little bit about the ATA tent rental division and why you think it's different from some of the other options out there. Obviously, ARA is great, Madra is great, but there are differences I think that are important for people to understand.
I mean, the tent rental division has been around a long time, and basically it supports solely the tent industry. And I guess what's different about us, and those are us from two other great organizations, the ATA TRD, because we're part of ATA. We are a trade organization, and we have member benefits, and we offer a lot of different things. We have a full-time staff that does work for us. We have a full-time code consultant that does all our code monitoring, which is very important because a code could come out and not be good for the tent industry, and it's going to screw a lot of us. So we monitor these things. I mean, they came out with a code recently, just for example. FEMA came out with a proposed code that they didn't want to allow temporary structures in flood zones. Now, they didn't give much information, but when you read into that, I'm on Long Island in New York. We're in a flood zone everywhere.
Mhm,
So what does that mean? We can't put tents up in New Orleans anymore. We can't put tents up anywhere on the coast. So, but if you let these people or politicians or lobbyists put these codes through and nobody challenges them, it would cripple the industry. So
mhm,
we have a great co-consultant, Paul Armstrong, who's on full time, not just for TRD, but he handles all the ATA divisions. And he's monitoring these codes, putting questions in. They put change proposals in, and that's very important. So that's one big thing that ATA does. ATA, Matra, and ARA teamed up together and put together a certification program for the industry. It's the first time anything like this has ever been done. ARA always had their cert program for the rentals, but never really a tent certification. So, hopefully you guys will put a link up to it because it's such a great program to look
yep,
into, to have your people trained and your crews trained. And it's going to eventually end up in certifications. We're going to have a couple of levels, a professional level certification, and then eventually a master certification for people who want to continue their education. The tent industry is one of the most underrated industries out of any industry. We work the hardest. We have to work in any conditions. We have timelines that can't be changed, and we get the least credit in the industry. We don't have these educational, these titles, these certifications that we can do, like the audiovisual uh, construction has. So this is very big for the tent industry, and I hope everybody takes advantage of it and at least looks it up. The first part of the course is free for everybody, and that's the foundations of safe tenting. You can do that online, and then we have some other stuff, which I'll talk about in a little bit when I talk about the expo schedule. So I think we've been working on that very, very, very diligently. The ATA TRD also came out with a ballot study, and we worked with Clemson University, and so we put our membership dollars are going back into supporting the industry, and we've come out with since then two different ballot studies, one for engineered tents and one for non-engineered tents. What else are we doing? We have other member benefits that many people don't take advantage of and they don't think about, and I use them personally. So I have a 401k program for block and roll that's
yep,
through ATA. It's a fantastic program. It's effortless to put it together. We're also doing our healthcare through ATA's program. We get shipping discounts through ATA. There's a whole bunch of benefits that we are continually trying to improve to give the members extra benefits. But a lot of people say, "Well, why do I really need to be a member?" And these are the main reasons. The other reason is if you're in the tent industry, support the industry organization that is working for you. One of the big things we're doing now also is we're doing code official training. And what does that mean? Well, we're meeting with code officials throughout the country, and we are educating them on the tent industry. We are trying to bring the tent operator and the code official together, work together for common goals, not fighting each other. We're trying to clarify the codes. What are you looking for? Here's what's possible. Here's what's not possible. No, it's not possible for us to have sprinklers in a tent. And no, it's not possible to put that tent up away from the buildings X amount of because of whatever the thing is. We need to work together. You talk about code officials, and they interpret code different ways. And we're trying to get them all on the same page. We're trying to finally get a inquiry form for tent permits. That's a universal form that we try to get code jurisdictions to accommodate. We're working on it now. We have our code committee working on this. And coming up, I'll talk about later, we have some big seminars coming up for code officials. But I think, trade show, we do our tent show every 2 years, a tent expo, which is very good. We do our tech conference on the off years, which is a very good networking. And then we do our local training and boot camps. And those are critical because we'll come to your region and we'll do a boot camp and teach people safety and how to put up tents, how to properly take them down, how to work safe, go over different codes and different things that you have to be aware of. And I think that's important because you're not getting the information anywhere else, and you're not going to learn it from YouTube. You really need to come to one of these industry events, and the TRD really works hard. We're all volunteers, and we really work hard to put the best content out for our members.
No, absolutely. And then you have, like you said, a staff member, Jill
Yes.
Newman, who's fantastic. Does a great job supporting our division of the ATA.
Correct.
So one item, safety wise, that I know is newer: 811, call before you stake.
Correct. So the TRD worked with the Common Ground Alliance. What is that? Well, that's the major organization that handles the call centers across the country for 811. And if you're putting up tents and you don't know what 811 is, you need to find out what 811 is real quick. 811 is the underground utility mark out number. So you're required across the country, before you pierce the ground or dig or put a stake in the ground, you're required to call before you dig. So we had a lot of tent guys say, well, I'm not digging. I'm not using an excavator. I don't have to do this. So yes, you do. Anything that goes in the ground over 6 inches, even if you're digging in your backyard, put in a tree, you're supposed to call 811. Or because, excuse me, you don't know if there's any underground utilities running through there. And utility companies don't always run just to the front of houses. Sometimes they run through private properties, and they'll have a main gas line running through your backyard and you don't even know it. And I've had that experience. I've had that happen. So we came together with the Common Ground Alliance and we said, hey, we're from the tent industry. We're piercing the ground all the time. We have a problem getting our members to understand this and get on board. We want to do a campaign for the tent industry. They agreed, they worked with us, and the new campaign is called Call Before You Stake. And basically, if you go on 811's website, which I think is 811, call811.com is their main site, there's a toolkit you can get for the tent industry. It says Call Before You Stake, and it has pictures, it has information, it has like a something you can send out to clients on why you're doing this, to explain to your clients, maybe why you charge what you charge, because you have safety in mind, you have their guest safety in mind. And it's a great program. We have some good graphics you could put out and put them on your website and put them on your social media and show people that you are calling before you stake. Now, typically it's you call 3 days before your event, minimum of 3 days. Every jurisdiction might have a slight change. And when you call about your state, you'll find out what you have to do. And they will send somebody out and mark all the public utilities. Now, that's a key word, public utilities. So they will mark public gas lines, public communication lines, water lines, and you as the contractor are responsible to call, not the homeowner. So it is very important that the contractor is the one who's calling. Now, does that absolve you of everything? No, because now you have some work to do. Now you have to make sure when you get to your site, you're looking for the marks. And you want to make sure that you're staying 24 inches or more away from those marks, because that's where the gas line or electrical line is. Now, there is severe consequences for hitting some of these lines. You can hit a gas line, you can have an explosion. You can hit a communications line, a fiber optic line at a commercial property, and you could be facing hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines because you can knock out an entire grid of communications. Water lines, obviously, water line is less of a risk, but you have water shooting everywhere and flooding. Now, does that absolve you of all responsibilities of what's on the ground? No, because when you're working at a private facility, a private house, or a commercial building, there could be private utilities. So we're all putting tents up in backyards, right? And we're putting tents up in backyards, and there's a swimming pool back there. Well, I would ask, where do the lines go to the swimming pool? There's electric, there's possibly gas for a heater, and there's water lines. And they don't dig them that deep. So you want to know from your client where these lines are, and you want to avoid those areas. Same thing at a commercial property. They have parking lot lights. They could have additional gas lines coming into a different part of the building. They could have additional water lines coming in. You want to ask those questions and make sure you know what's underground, whether it's private or public. But 811 is a great start. And if you're not using it, you have any questions, anybody can reach out to me personally. You can look me up on Facebook or Instagram, or send me a message, and I'll be happy to help you with the information on it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the number one most important safety thing. So, yeah, if someone doesn't know about 811 and they've been doing tenting, I think that's the very first resource you should go to. The only line we ever hit as a rental business was someone's sprinkler line.
Yeah.
And sprinkler lines are easier to figure out, right? You can go find the heads and then kind of put together in your head where the pipes might go between them, but that's expensive. I've had to replace one in my own yard, and that's $500,000 for someone to fix that, and the homeowner's going to expect you to be the one to fix it. But
I think what's worse than having to fix the sprinkle line is having to explain to the bride's family that now the ground is saturated and muddy because we hit the sprinkle line and it leaked all over. Sometimes you can't get the water shut off fast enough to, and you have 1,000 gallons that came out. So I think it's important to know where the sprinkler lines are, which I think a lot of people are conscious of, but they're not conscious of the real utilities that could be a real risk, like the gas line to the pool or the main gas line for a utility provider that might be going through the house.
yeah, I mean, a gas line's going to blow up and it's going to probably kill someone. An electrical line, you're going to electrocute the person.
Correct.
A water line, you're going to think it's a rock probably, and you're going to keep hitting, and then you're getting thousands and thousands of gallons of water out there.
Yep.
To your point, the fiber optic, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially. So really great program you guys have put together. So let's talk for a bit here about the ATA Tent Expo. You referenced it. So where is it? What are the dates, and then how much does it cost for someone to attend?
Tent Expo is January 27th to the 29th in Kissimmee, Florida. And it's at the Margaritaville Resort, which is a beautiful resort. So, make it a family trip because it's really nice. You can bring your family, come a few days earlier or stay a few days later. They can really have a good time. It's a really nice place. But we have lots of other things going on starting on the 25th. So we put together a really comprehensive show this year with a lot of different things that are happening. What's another big thing in our industry? Forklift training, right? We actually have forklift training on site. You can come on Sunday and be trained on a forklift and get certified for OSHA. And if you're using a forklift in your rental business or renting a forklift, you need to have an OSHA card to be operating that forklift for your insurance or safety reasons, and sometimes facilities require it that you're operating with that. Then we get to Monday, and part of the certification program that I discussed with earlier, we have the second level of that, which is our anchoring course, and that's essentials of safe anchoring, and that's a hands-on course. So you sit in a classroom for a couple of hours, and then you do some practical stuff outside, and there's a test. And that is a paid course to take that, and you wind up with a test and a certificate of completion that you took that. You do have to have the other course taken, the free safe tenting, the Foundations of Safe Tenting course, but in progression. But that's very easy to do right before the show. You can get that done. Then one of the third legs of the certification is our frame tent course. So there's going to be a frame tent course certification course that's going to happen on Tuesday. Sorry, on Tuesday, and that's new. It's the first time we'll be doing it. So we just completed. I'm sorry, not the first time. We did it at Matra in November. They debuted the frame tent course, so we're going to be doing that again on Tuesday. We're working on a pole tent course simultaneously. If we have the pole tent course, we might switch, but because we just did the frame, but right now we're scheduled to do the frame tent course. Again on Tuesday, also for the larger tent operators that are using boom lifts and the man lifts, okay? We have the MUPE training, which is, MUPE is, oh boy, what is that? I'm drawing a blank, but that's for scissor lifts, and man lifts, booms, cherry pickers, those kind of things. We have training for that. Also on Tuesday, I mentioned the code officials. So we've put together a complete full day of training for code officials on Tuesday. So if you have local code officials in your area, we'll put a link in this, hopefully, that you can send them the information. And we worked hard and got this course certified for ICC credits. So they will get continuing education credits, which a lot of these departments need and have budgets for to send their code officials out to take courses or classes or seminars. So we had this credited by ICC, and they will get continuing education credits. That's going to happen all day on Tuesday. It's a very comprehensive course for the code officials. We're going to have tours of the facility showing them all different tents and various
Yeah.
things.
I think the code official thing is important because they are all of them try to apply the building codes, right, for a permanent building to temporary structures. And I think
Correct.
that's one disconnect.
Correct.
And then the fire marshals come out and it's maybe they just make up, right? Because that's kind of the standards they have in whatever their local zone is. So bring those folks in. That's fantastic.
And we've done a few of these in a smaller scale, 20, 25 to 100 code officials at a seminar. And
Mhm.
they get so much out of it because they really don't understand temporary tenting. And we clear up the different styles of tents, the different things to look for. They want to know how to inspect the tent. And they don't understand certain things. And they're looking for things that maybe are not important, like they're looking for that sprinkler system, or they're looking for different things that tents don't have, that permanent structures have. So it's really good education for them. So far, the program's been working great. So hopefully help us promote it to your code officials. Let's try to fill it up. We do have a golf event. We have a golf tournament, which is great. That's lots of fun networking. And we started a thing a couple of years ago. We call it the Next Gen. So we separated the tent operators to from Next Gen, which is like the newer and up and coming, not just young. If you're in the tent business for only 2 years, you're a Next Gen, right? You're new, rather than we call the OGs, right? The OG's been around a long time. But what we do with these events is we take the next gens, the newer operators, and we have them a little networking event, and then we bring in the OGs. And the idea is network with these OGs because these are the guys and girls that you need to talk to. These are the people that have been around the industry for a long time and have all the answers that you don't have. And believe it or not, 95% of us, okay, I consider myself an OG being over 20 years, are very happy to share information. We're very happy to take a phone call or an email and say, hey, I have this situation. What do I do? What can I use? What would work? We're very happy to give that information out. So take advantage of some of those events. Wednesday, we have a full day of education. We have some great stuff. I'm not going to go through it, but it's going to be on the schedule. We have some really good educational stuff. We have our Wadesky Award lunch, which we honor somebody at every show or two people at every show, or industry icons who've really done work for the industry, the TRD, and the industry as a whole. And that's great to go to and see some of these people. And it's nice that we really acknowledge the work a lot of people have done for the industry. We have our opening reception. And then one of my favorite things about Tent Expo, we started it in 2024 as a soapbox derby. So that'll be a kickoff night. We do a soapbox derby where manufacturers and tent rental companies can enter a car. And it's a gravity car that you put a driver in. We build a big ramp, and it's a gravity drop down the ramp and down the course. And it became one of the most competitive things I ever thought I would see, but it was a lot of fun. Block and Roll had a car entered last time. We didn't win the race, but we did take best in show.
Yeah.
I'm happy about that. Thursday. So we brought in a big financial speaker, Rod Bristol of Profit Soup, a very well-known financial speaker, very expensive speaker, but we felt the need to do this. We do have this as an add-on to the show. I think it's $100. And it's going to be a phenomenal session, blueprint for growth. We've had multiple meetings with Rod. We have a little committee together. So he's really, really tailoring it to our industry. A bunch of us opened up our books to him and showed him different things. So he has good information. He's not going to be talking about, generic businesses. He's going to be talking about the rental business and tent companies in particular. So that's going to be a great thing. Thursday, we've got some demo time. We got vendor networking. We got a party on the pad, which is always fun. And we have the Derby finals that night. So, why do you go to Tent Expo? The main reason you go is two things. You go for education and you go for networking. I'm not really sure which is the top one because I sometimes put networking above education because some of the best education you can get is by talking to somebody who's been through or been in the industry a long time. But our education is excellent. And if you're really serious about doing tents, for a couple of $100 for to come to the show, and we have group rates on the hotels and stuff like that. And if you're a family, I believe the hotel has cottages that you can rent that are multi-bedroom and they're pretty inexpensive. But if you're serious about the tent industry, you should be a member of ATA because we're working for you. Two, come to Tent Expo because it's really a great way to learn to network, and never mind, and see great products. Like that's always great too, because you get to see the products before you buy them. A lot of people say, well, I'm not really in the mood and ready to buy a tent or something like that. And you know what I say? Because I was never ready to buy a tent at these shows. But I came to the show, I saw the product, I spoke to the manufacturer. So let's say, Tony, you had a really new product and a unique thing, and I'm not ready for it. But that's great.
Yep.
But it's here. And now 6 months later, I'm talking to a client who says, do you have this tent that can do this and go here in this color? And I'm like, yeah, I know
Yeah.
exactly where to get that because I saw it. I know how to put it up because I talked to the manufacturer while I was there. I know what it's going to cost me because I got a quote on it. And that makes you smarter and be able to react faster. So definitely come look at the products, learn. There's demos, hands-on. Get your hands on something. And if you're not a guy or a tent company that puts up pole tents, you want to get into pole tents. Come early for the setup days. Work with the manufacturer who's putting up a pole tent. They will teach you everything you need to know. They will show you the right way. Same thing with a frame tent. If you don't have frame tents, maybe you're just getting started. You want to learn. Come put up a frame tent with one of the manufacturers. Structures. Everybody's, a lot of companies are, oh, structures, that's way too big for me. But you know what? Structures are the future. And structures start very small size. So you can get structures that are 20 feet wide. But if you're interested in maybe down the road getting into structures, come, put one up,
Yeah.
get your hands on it,
Yeah.
see what's really involved in it.
Yeah. I was going to say that's a unique thing is the manufacturers aren't going to send 8 people to set their tents up.
Right.
You can show up and be instructed by them and be their installation crew and be
Right.
able to set it up. But I think a lot of people sometimes think, well, I'm going to go to one show. All the shows are the same. And for me, the ARA show is a buying show, more of a buying show, right? It's got everything that's attached to the rental industry. Plus, if you're a tool shop or an equipment shop, it's a huge show, right? And there's educational events, but they're in a conference room.
Correct.
And I think the big difference between an ATA Expo is you're getting the hands-on experience. You're outside. There is grass. There is asphalt. Everything is underneath tents.
Right.
So you get to see what people's tents look like. There's the tour of the tents, which is an interesting experience to see what people's tents look like, right? And then to your point, there's so much networking opportunity, which one of my favorite things as well to get to know people. So I would always tell people go to both. You get a very different
Correct.
set of experiences and bring your team, right? Those are the people who are out in the field. Those are the people that are going to learn. And so I think we've taken the industry a very long way in even 5-10 years. The tent rental division has done a great job of that.
We really are trying to legitimize the tent industry and the tent worker. We want them to feel like that this is a career they're in. They're not just in a little part-time job. And you may have started that way, but there is a future in this business. There's many, many, many companies that offer a good career path, and nobody ever looked at it that way. And I had a crew working for me, some guys working for me over 20 years, 15 years, 10 years. And we struggled to make it that career path for them because we didn't, but I wish I had these tools now that I didn't have back then, but we did our own training. And we'd have our own in-house training. We do tent squaring as a training program. And these guys got a little badge they put on their hard hat or their vest that said, "I'm trained in tent squaring," and they pumped up their chest. And we did a frame tent, or tent, how to put up tents. And they got another sticker that said, I'm certified in forklifts. And these guys walked around with their chests out because that's what they want. They want to feel empowered. They want to feel like there's more to it than just, I'm just a laborer, doing some work.
Yep.
And they want an opportunity. Now, listen, there's a lot of people who don't want to do anything and they're very happy just putting up tents and staying low key. That's fine. But a good amount of your crew do want to advance and they do want to learn. And I always looked at people and when I hired somebody and I said, can they do my job? I want them to do my job because they're learning everything and they can grow, they can make more money and they can have a better life, but they got to want it. And these tools help people get interested in the tent industry for sure.
And I think the way to think about it, and I think a lot of people do this, is they think about it as an expense rather than an investment. And I can tell you, having gone to all of these shows with 110% certainty, that investment will pay off tenfold for you in business as you go over time. So think about it as an investment, not an
100%. Your people are your best investment for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So you and I are both talkers, and so we're longer than a traditional of our podcast. But I like that we could talk about your rental experience and selling that business. Block and Roll is a great tool. We refer people over there. You refer people back to us for the temp housing system. And then, like I said, I'm on the board of the ATA. It's a fantastic organization. All of the member benefits, I think, are something we promote a lot, and people still don't understand how great a 401k, healthcare benefits, all those things are. So we're going to take this out with some rapid fire non-rental questions. So this is a 5-10 word answer.
Okay, boy, go ahead.
If you could open another business completely unrelated to event rentals, what would it be?
Oh man, I think I just want to sell like drinks on a beach somewhere, you know?
What beach? Do you have a favorite beach somewhere?
Oh, I'll take a beach anywhere. I'm a beach guy, so anywhere you give me a shore, I'm in. I'm in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite interview question. You talked about investing in people and getting the people on your team. What's your
Yep. It's
favorite?
funny. I always like the manhole cover question. Why is a manhole cover round? To really see how people think, and then take them off guard a little bit from the conversation.
Yeah. If a theme song played every time you entered a room, what would it be?
Oh man. Oh, that's tough. That's tough. I don't know if I have a theme song. Oh,
It's got to be Billy Joel. I mean, Billy Joel's.
yeah. I'm a Led Zeppelin guy, so maybe some rock and roll or something. I like that.
Okay. What was your go-to fast food option when you were running between jobs?
Fast food. Yeah, that's tough because there was a lot of options. I think the quickest was always McDonald's. McDonald's cheeseburgers. I mean, they just work.
Favorite or most gifted business book?
Most gifted business book. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. It's a little short read too. It was the story with the McDonald's guy. I can't remember the name of the book now. Drawing a blank.
Okay.
Where he talks about how he set up his processes and different things. Yeah.
Okay.
About
So Ray Kroc.
I'll send you a link. Yeah, I'll send you a link. It's about story.
Okay. Send us the link. Do you have any podcasts you listen to related to business?
I listen to you guys. There's a couple other podcasts. I like to listen to those guys. I don't really get out too much into other podcasts. Time is just limited, but I picked up a few episodes of Joe Rogan here and there and a couple other things, but not really too much into that.
What are you doing when you're sitting in New York traffic then?
Yeah, decompressing most of the time. Sometimes I just want to sit with silence.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
If you had a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, getting a message out to millions of people, what would it say and why?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is do unto others how you want things done to you, because that's so important, how people treat other people. And I think it's a lesson lost, like treat people with respect, and you hope to get the respect back, but you're not going to get it if you treat people like crap.
And then special talent or most interesting thing about yourself.
Special talent, the most interesting thing about myself. Oh, I don't have a lot of talents. I guess my best talent is just common sense. I'm just a common sense kind of guy. I could just see through something and just figure it out. And I think that's a skill that's hard to find and hard to learn, but I would say that's probably one of my best talents.
I mean, if you're looking for common sense, go to Brooklyn. I feel like most people in Brooklyn have a lot of common
Yeah,
sense.
I like to say I'm from the original Brooklyn before the man buns and the skinny jeans.
I'm trying to picture you with a man bun right now. All right. Any final advice for someone starting out in the rental business?
I mean, I think the best advice I could give, and from experience, right? Um, don't buy with your eyes. Don't build your business with your eyes. Don't look at your competitors or what they're doing. Focus on what you could do, what you could do well, and what you could do profitably, because we often overlook profit. Guilty as charged when I first started. I did not look at profit as a thing. We were just growing and growing, and I had, my eyes were open, and I wanted this, I wanted this, I wanted to get that. And learn to say no. Okay. That's a big lesson, because we were a yes company. And it was one of our best features, being a yes company, because we'd get the call 24 hours, 12 hours before an event, and we'd make it happen. But it was our worst feature too, because we just didn't know when to say no. And later on in the years, we finally really started saying no. Sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes saying no is by price. Okay, because maybe you can get that job done, but you have to bring in an extra crew, extra time. So, but learn how to say no and learn to stay in your lane, because you go out of your lane too much and you get eaten up.
All right, Nick, always a pleasure to talk to you. Super educational to talk about block and roll, hear your experience, and then hope to see every single person listening to this podcast, as well as yourself at the TRD Expo.
Okay, 17, my favorite number. I want to see how many people listen to this to the end.
All right. All right. Want to start your own rental business? Visit americantent.com/tent rental and download our guide on the 7 steps to start your own tent rental business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. For more great content, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And if you want to be a guest, email marketing@americantent.com. Thanks for listening to How I Rent It. And until next time, keep things intense.